Let's welcome, as we always do, Mr. Gareth A. Davies. Gareth, you know how this show works by now. What have you been up to this week?
Well, I went to Dubai for the week for crypto fight nights and saw some crypto dealers fighting each other. Had a lot of fun there. A very good Liverpudlian fighter called Jack Corrie, Wacko Jacko, was on the card. He's got a very positive future ahead of him. Aaron Hinchcliffe being the promoter, he's got an organisation out there, but had a great time doing that. Came back Friday, and literally I've been nocturnal since then. Stayed up till 4 a.m. for the New York card. Stayed up till 1:30 after talkSPORT's fight night with Spencer Oliver, till 5 a.m. for the Riyadh card, and then stayed up on Sunday into Monday for Inoue and felt like I was an owl, if anything, sleeping during the day and up at night. Obviously, a lot to break down. I'll save it for our kind of mash-up, if you like. But it's been a very long week, let me put it that way, because when you're staying up late at night and fighters aren't delivering, it's very, very slow. How about you?
Yeah, so, honestly, not much, if I'm honest with you. Just looking forward to the boxing. And I was looking forward to it. Obviously, we're going to, as you say, get into the nuts and bolts of it. But I was looking forward to what I expected to be a good weekend of boxing. Some of the biggest stars in the sport all fighting on the same weekend, which is rare. So I was really looking forward to it. And ultimately, apart from the top rank card, felt let down. Honestly, felt let down. Felt like, okay, I've stayed up and I've waited. Like many, I've been excited, and then nothing delivered, which was a bit of a disappointment. Prior to the fights, which ones were you most like? Which one was you most excited about?
Probably Noya Nui and Ramon Cardenas.
Okay.
Cardenas hadn't lost since, I want to say, 2017, for 8 years ago. The only loss in his
Yeah.
career to Danny Flores, a majority points decision over 10 rounds. And I knew that he was a big puncher and that he would take his opportunities. Noya Nui outside Japan is always exciting. We know that he goes for the knockout. We know that he's reckless. We know that it's dangerous for him in fights early on. I think last week we said to each other on this podcast, on this show, that there's always a danger of things going wrong when you have the semi-finals.
Yeah.
And I think what we saw in New York, amazing location as it was and a great thing to try and do, Rolly Romero exposed the fact that Ryan Garcia has been away for a year and needed a tune-up, and Romero took his opportunities. Devin Haney looked gun-shy for me against Jose Ramirez, who's a very come-forward type fighter. And after 2 rounds, I couldn't understand why Haney's upper body didn't match his lower body, i.e. I think he's got too big in the upper body. I do think he's gun-shy, or he's certainly gun-shy in that fight. And I think Teofimo, he didn't know at that point that Ryan Garcia was going to lose, obviously. So he was protecting the rematch in some ways, potentially. And Teofimo Lopez delivered against Arnold Barboza, but he's on a different level. And he didn't listen once to his father in the corner about using his jab, which is fascinating. So, you know, to tic-tac-toe on it, the final thing as well, William Skull and Canelo, the least punches thrown in an undisputed fight ever. The fighters didn't deliver, but I think the events were put on for them to deliver. When you think about $140 million were spent on purses over the weekend, 80 million of those on Canelo, we are led to believe. 20 million on Ryan Garcia, we're led to believe. The guys didn't deliver. And it was
that statement about the events were put on for them to deliver. If you're a fighter, would you not just want to fight in an arena with 25,000 people? Like, as much as it's nice and it's going to be remembered, do you want to fight in front of 300 VVIPs who are not even making a noise to the point where you can hear a penny drop? Or do you want to fight in front of 25,000 screaming fans who can afford to go to these events and pack out an arena?
Yeah,
If
maybe,
you're a
maybe
fighter.
the point's well made, but I think they were being extraordinarily paid. Haney, I believe, earned 10 million. I believe Teofimo's
Wow.
10 million US, 10 million US for those two, and 20 million I understand for Ryan Garcia, who was definitely the A side on the promotion.
Is that the issue then? Is that the issue that these fighters are now overpaid? And where's the hunger if you are getting that? Like normally, you earn that kind of money in a final, so to speak, because you mentioned it kind of being semi-finals, right? So normally you get to the final and you make that kind of money. Are these fighters being overpaid to the point where the hunger's gone, their real drive's gone because they are getting so much money? And in years gone by, you had to deliver with bums on seats and pay-per-view revenue to get that kind of, to warrant that kind of money.
Well, that's an argument put forward by Tim Bradley on Sunday, which I don't disagree with
Yeah.
after the Inoue Ramon Cardenas fight. And 8,500 were there at the T-Mobile, half full. Look, I understand the point you're making, but I don't think Ryan Garcia did show a lot of hunger on the night, but he showed a lot of ring rust and he showed a lot of shock when he was put down in the second round by Rolly Romero, the hungrier fighter, if we want to go into that. Arnold Barboza didn't have the wherewithal to beat Teofimo Lopez, and Jose Ramirez was outpointed and outmaneuvered and outdanced by Devin Haney, who committed very little on the night. We haven't heard from Bill Haney, who's normally very vocal after his son's fights. They've gone into their shells a little bit. It was roundly disappointing. I think that the whole week was very exciting. The build-up, the trash talk, the interpolation of the different guys and people having go at each other. There were 3 fights on that card with 3 big names, Lopez, Garcia and Haney, so that at least there were 2 that came out of it. There's no Haney-Garcia rematch for me. There may never be a Garcia-Haney rematch. There's something not right with Devin Haney after that contest. And Ryan Garcia looks like a ghost of himself, I'm afraid. Lopez was the standout.
Yeah, we're going to do a deep dive into the New York card a bit later on the show. Look, Times Square, did it work? Didn't it work? Things that can be taken away that maybe can be kept and things that need to be left alone for other sports. You mentioned Saudi Arabia. The main event ring walk time there to suit the people watching it back in Vegas was 7 a.m. local time. Did they get that wrong, or is it a case you've got to appease your biggest audience, which would have been the West Coast audience, which is where obviously most of Canelo's fans are from?
Yeah, you had to, because it was Cinco de Mayo weekend, traditionally where Canelo fights in Vegas, and he has for several years now, where there's a huge Mexican audience. I understand it's around about 30 million Mexicans watch Canelo fights. He had to do that in prime time to keep that market. They've done that with the UFC before in pay-per-view events in Manchester, haven't they, where they go from midnight till 6 in the morning. Obviously, we have time zones in the world, and you can't cater for everybody. The idea was that Canelo would fight in Riyadh season, and he has. I think it was Riyadh season, and was it Riyadh? It was a Riyadh season card, wasn't it? Not a ring magazine
Yeah,
card.
it was not Riyadh.
Um,
Well, actually, that's a good question. I think it was almost both, wasn't
I
it?
think
Because I
it
remember
was.
seeing Rick Reno in the ring.
Yeah,
Yeah, with the ring belt for every fight.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rick Reno now in shades and a hat.
Yeah, Rick Reno, the gangster looking Rick Reno now.
With the belt, with the gold in his bag. So look, the biggest issue was William Skull not engaging and Canelo not being able to hunt him down. Again, it was hard to stay awake here at 4 a.m. while that was ongoing, because it was deflating in many ways, because it wasn't the great.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah, with
It was embarrassing.
Skull didn't deliver, neither did Canelo as a result. I mean, Canelo wanted to hunt him down, but he was winning the round so easily by landing 4 or 5 punches that I mean, to hear some people afterwards suggesting that Skull won, or even Skull thinking he won the bout, was absolutely ludicrous. He ran all night. He was on his bike. He
Yeah.
barely engaged. It was
Well,
trite.
the punch stats though will say he threw more punches than Canelo.
I know, but that's ridiculous, isn't it? Just shows you what the profligacy of punch stats and whether they really count or not. The only good thing really to come out of it on Sunday morning early for us was the fact that Terence Crawford was there, and on the strength of that performance, you give Terence Crawford a damn good opportunity of outpointing Canelo, who doesn't throw combinations anymore. He throws single punches. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by the way, the Allegiant Stadium with 70,000 people, to your point, on September the 12th, which I see is a Friday, by the way, which I find interesting. Why are they doing it on a Friday and not a Saturday in Vegas? That's beyond me at the moment. Maybe there's
I think it's college basketball on the Saturday.
Okay.
But still, I mean, go up against it. This is Canelo Crawford.
Yeah.
It's a completely different audience. It's a basketball audience. It's a boxing audience. I get it if it was a big MMA, MMA fight. Say it was John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Okay, cool. Maybe you don't want to go up against that, but to not do it because of college basketball. Are you kidding me?
Is that the reason being given for it at the moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans have come out. I've kind of gone onto a few blogs, and a few Americans are saying there's a big college basketball game on the Saturday. So I guess that's probably it. That's probably the reason, because there's nothing else competing with it. But 70,000. I mean, off the back of Canelo's performance, I'm not going to say Canelo's star powers dwindle because he's still Canelo. But we don't see Crawford other than once a year. I think he should have had an interim fight. So, yes, I'm very, very excited for it, and I will get more excited as the fight draws closer. But my level of excitement right now, seeing them two go face to face, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is incredible. I can't wait. I kind of felt a bit flat. Maybe it was because of Canelo's performance and because we haven't seen Crawford since the Madrimov fight.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't stretched by Skull. He needs to fight punches. He said so himself afterwards. That's why we've all wanted the David Benavidez fight for so long, because that would have been a punch-up, which is what we want to see. Look at the glory, and we'll come to it a bit more in a minute, but look at the glory that Conor Ben's basking in New York.
Wow.
Losing a 12-round war, not winning a 12-round war, but being treated like a superstar over there and, strutting around like he was the victor.
It's great. It's a great example, isn't it?
Yeah, but he was being celebrated last week for the efficacy of his efforts against Chris Eubank Jr. because everyone was still talking about it, and he rightly, in his own mind, acted like the conquering hero when he was over there. Even saying, "Nah, don't fancy the Ryan Garcia fight anymore after that performance." So it's. I mean, Eddie Hearn said it last week. Sometimes it's not about the belts; it's about the matchups and how good and how good they are, and how well the guys deliver it in a resonant fight. I mean, what's bigger at the moment? Because it's being nudged around. I know we'll come to it on today's show, but Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, if they nudge towards this fight in September, October, or Canelo and Crawford. Right now, it's probably Joshua and not for the purist.
Joshua and Fury.
Not for the purist.
Yeah, Joshua Fury. Joshua Fury. Yeah. My one big takeaway from a lot of this over the weekend is fights. I wonder if fights now are being made for TV as they were, like for entertainment. I almost feel like the fights are being made. I don't know who the matchmaker is for a lot of these fights, but I feel like the fights are not being made for TV as they once were. It didn't have to be the best versus the best. It was, okay, what's going to be a fantastic fight for the TV viewers or those in attendance? And a lot of these matchups, even on paper, you could almost see that a lot of these matchups weren't going to deliver from a fan's perspective, and I think that's a bit of a problem as well.
I wonder if Garcia and Haney should have just fought each other in Times Square.
That would have been it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one. Very quickly, Martin Bacoli, obviously 299 pounds of him. I saw him actually at the airport, and I actually touched his belly. I went up to him and I said, Martin, and I grabbed his belly and I said, please, Martin, come on, this. And he says, I know. I'm going to have 1 week's rest and go straight into training camp. I don't know if he will. But I thought he was quite fortunate to get a draw against F.A. Jagba. I think F.A. could have nicked it 96, 94 maybe. But Martin Bacoli, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with him. The weight's clearly an issue. He was 310 pounds against Joseph Parker. And so he only came down 10 pounds for F.A. Jagba. I'm like, how can you only lose 10 pounds in a fight camp?
Yeah, well, Billy Nelson's come out and said that he's getting him a proper full-time nutritionist now, isn't he? And that Martin's a vegan as well. I didn't know that. Doesn't eat meat.
Yeah.
And
I think that's when Billy's around, he doesn't eat meat.
Yeah.
Because I think he tucks into a lot of chicken when Billy's not around.
But maybe there's a lot of stew and rice, those things for his Congolese meals. And he did look big. I thought he won the last 3 rounds, but it was he came back strong, and that's one thing about his conditioning. But don't write off F.A. Jagba, everybody, because this is a 6'5", 6'7" Nigerian powerhouse as well, who I love the things he was saying in the build-up, that Bacoli had sacrificed himself at 48 hours notice and he had nothing to be proud of. And maybe that payday, which I understood was $2 million, something like that, as maybe, talk about hunger again, maybe just took the hunger away for this May fight a little bit. But I don't want to be too critical of Bacoli, because I admired him for stepping in on 48 hours notice against Joseph Parker, making that long long haul flight to get to Riyadh, and even doing interviews when he got there late on that Friday night with some of the social media groups. But it was again, it added to what was standard fare from the two events.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. All right, you're listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Still to come, we're going to get stuck into this weekend's fight between Anthony Cacace and Lee Wood. But up next, we're going to turn our attention to Friday night in New York. A bold experiment in Times Square, but is it one we'll see again? Welcome back. You're listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Ade Oladipo, the great Gareth, Ade Davies. All right, let's kind of go forward here. Friday night, Times Square. We've been talking about this event for the best part of 4 or 5 months. And it came, it went, and I don't know if it will be remembered. And that's kind of what everyone wanted it to be, right? In terms of visually, Gareth, so we'll get stuck into the details of the fight, but just visually, it wasn't what I expected. And I have to be brutally honest. I remember seeing some images go around a few months out as to what it was going to look like. And I kind of had this vision of the ring, and yes, a section of VVIPs, right? I get it. But then almost a crowd surrounding the VIPs, like just passers by, just stopping. And oh my God, Ryan Garcia is in the ring. Like, I expected that. And then when I saw visuals of it, and it had like big red boards put up, like said Ring Magazine and Box Raw. So basically no passers by could actually see it, almost like enclosed. I was like, okay, this isn't what I expected. Your take on it?
Well, I think there would have been big screens there for crowds to see, but obviously the traffic was still moving. They couldn't completely shut down Times Square. It's a very narrow, we've both been there many times, a very narrow tranche between high-rise buildings, between skyscrapers. So I think the event was live on big screens. There seemed to be crowds on certain corners. I don't know how the camera angles looked difficult as well. The big was showing the main card. There was, from what I could make out, like you say, there were 2 rows of seats, but bands down the side. Presentation teams, as you know, it gets very complex with where you place your presentation teams. Kate Scott and Mike Tyson up in 2 little windows. I thought there were times when the commentary was a little off. Jim Lampley hasn't done it for a long time. Legend that he is. Who else was on comms?
Tarver was with him.
Antonio Tarver admitted at one point that he hadn't looked at any of the boxers, a couple of the
Yeah.
boxers, ever before, which I thought was unusual. Mike Coppinger is not normally a commentator. I think it's
No, Mike Coppinger, like, I know he's got a lot of stick, and I don't know if it's his fault. Mike Coppinger's a writer.
yeah.
Mike Coppinger shouldn't be doing comms, and he shouldn't be doing the in-ring interviews, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, they're developing him, aren't they? I mean, he's
Yeah, but there's great people around to do it. You're developing people. There are great people around to do it. Like you're quite rare in the fact that you're a writer that also is a host and a presenter. You don't normally get that crossover. You are just one or the other.
Yeah, but I've been doing it a long
Mike's
time. I've been doing presenting for 20 plus years as well. So
yeah, I just gave you plaudits. That's what I said. You're rare. You're very rare. No, but you are though. Most writers don't. You know this.
yeah,
I think Mike's a very good writer, but I think there are other people that are good at the presenting
he's a
side of things.
newsbreaker.
I think Mike would.
He's a newsbreaker. He's a newsbreaking guy. They've obviously put him in a new role. So the commentary was a little bit clunky. I don't want to be too critical because they're all good at what they do, but it was a little bit clunky. So I'm just trying to describe how it came across, and I think it was an unusual venue, a new crew commentating. Obviously, there was a crew out in Riyadh as well because the broadcast team didn't go out to Riyadh, so you've got to take that into account. If I can say this, Madison Square Garden is an amazing venue. It has magic dust in the air, and even though they did something different, and it's out there now that they're looking to do something in Central Park in the summer. This is all well and good, but they've got an amazing venue in Madison Square Garden, which yourself, when you're in there, there's magic dust. Notwithstanding the fact that the Barclays Center in Brooklyn is a brilliant venue as well. So let's be different. Yes, I applaud. Let me just say this: Turki Al Sheikh put up huge amounts of money for this weekend of amazing fights. 5 of the biggest names in boxing right now: Haney, Garcia, Lopez, Inoue, and Canelo. And unfortunately, some of the fighters didn't deliver the thrills and excitement that we all wanted. But they're trying new things, and it's an experiment. So I don't want to be overly critical because I think sometimes we are. Because when people try new things, it doesn't always work. And I think they'll look again at this next time. They might have done it at Madison Square Garden, like you said. Then they could have had 25,000 people in there. They could have done Haney against Garcia straight away, and it would have sold out. All these different types of things.
Yeah, and ultimately, it all looks even worse considering the week before we had Eubank versus Ben, which did deliver in every single metric, and obviously the main event delivered as well. All right, let's talk about the main event on Friday: Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero. Ryan, who hasn't fought for a year, obviously was under a suspension that only recently got lifted. Physically, I thought he looked a bit different. I don't know. I know what people will point out and say, look, his last performance, unintentionally or intentionally, he had PEDs in his system. I thought physically he looked different. He didn't look as muscular, maybe. And also, and look, you've covered a number of sports. I almost feel like, like in the lead up to the Devin Haney fight, he was a bit crazy and ragged. I almost feel like I need to see a bit of that crazy and raggedness. Not 100% like Haney. I don't want to see 100. 100's a bit, but I feel like if you take a bit of crazy out of some of these athletes, I think they perform with their crazy side. And I think Ryan just almost seemed a bit with the fairies sometimes. Like, I need a bit of a crazy Ryan.
Yeah, he was a bit washed out, wasn't he? That's where very subdued, not the aggressive macho that he can be. Like you say, not off the charts crazy. And he wasn't there. And there are alter egos to Ryan. I've spoken to him about this. He has an alter ego that responds to the dislike of him and the hatred of him. And people weren't really having a full go at him in this event. People were just wanting to see him back, see him win, and fight Devin Haney again. Certainly, that's where I stood. Um, he served his time. He did the crime. He served his time. We expected him to come back. There, he was at welterweight now. Maybe that's a problem as well. Like we'll come to Haney in a minute, but um, at the end of the day, he's probably at his strongest at 140, 10
Mm.
stone, light welterweight. But it was a big shock. He didn't look great. He admitted to it afterwards, and there were those kind of awful scenes of him crying in his dressing room afterwards. It was all rather pathetic.
Yeah. Let's hear from Ryan. This is what Ryan had to say in the immediate aftermath of the fight.
Just even in the start of the fight, it just didn't feel like my feet were under me, like I had anything. Very off after the year layoff. I'm extremely disappointed in the way I fought. It felt like a sparring match, and it felt like it just didn't feel authentic to me. But no excuses. Didn't feel there at all. One of those things where I was like, man, I don't know what's going on. Nothing was clicking. Like once you step in the ring, everything fades away. This time I went into the ring and I could hear Shakur, Richardson, everybody like just screaming stuff. I don't know why I didn't zone it out. It was weird. Like it just felt like a weird fever dream just happened. It was just so awkward. Like I don't know why. Like usually fights don't feel that way. It just feels like you're in it and you're fighting. You don't hear nobody, nothing. So yeah, that was a little different. I gotta figure it out up here. You'll see that aggression come out. I just didn't have that. Didn't have that aggression to go kill. You gotta have that in the ring.
Ryan Garcia alluding to the fact that it was different. The environment was different. The atmosphere was different. And look, for these fighters, it must have been a bit different. And I'm not trying to give them a built-in excuse, but these are fighters that are used to fighting in packed-out arenas. Like I was lucky to be at the Barclays for Ryan versus Devin, and it was packed, and the noise, and it was like, wow, this was incredible. This was completely different. These were, I was going to say fans. There were some fans there, but these were VVIPs who barely made a noise. And that, again, that's not me giving him an excuse. That's just the nature of it. Most people like to perform in front of an audience. And there wasn't really an audience for him to perform. Would that have helped him? I don't know.
I think you're right.
I can understand. I can understand.
I think an audience would have helped him. He's that kind of guy that he comes alive when the cameras come on, when the big crowds are there, that there's a super ego, a super id within him, which brings, as I say, this alter ego out, that's someone that wants to perform under pressure, that enjoys the pressure of the occasion to be able to produce something spectacular, and it just wasn't there for him. He was an absolute shell of himself, Ade.
Yeah, he's got that excuse. Devin Haney, who was the co-main event, although it was billed as 3 main events, but the co-main event, Devin Haney against Jose Ramirez. I mean, prior to Canelo, Devin Haney, that output, like he's almost fortunate that Canelo had that kind of performance against William Skull, because Devin Haney's output against Jose Ramirez was just bad. And it scares me now a bit with Devin. Obviously, look, he took that beating off Ryan Garcia, and everyone says, how do you recover from a beating? He's clearly not recovered from that beating.
Well, he may never recover. He may. I saw him as very gun shy, caught a couple of times early by Jose Ramirez, circled the ring over and over again, never really set his feet. You were waiting for it. I thought the commentary did pick up brilliantly on this, that what is he doing here? This dance is too much. It's too deep. That plant your feet. He's on a different level to Jose Ramirez, in my view. But it was just, I think it was at 147, wasn't it? So
it was a catch weight of 143.
143. That's right. It was his first time up there. His upper body looked a lot bigger than I'd seen in the past.
He's not a welterweight, is he? He's just not a welterweight.
I don't think he is a welterweight. Even though seeing him in person in Riyadh recently, I did think he looked a lot more thick-set.
Yeah.
And he's got that capability about him, but I think maybe he needs to do more leg days as well. Or maybe he can't build up his legs too much, but there was something lacking. We sound very negative today, but there was something very lacking in the performance, in that he didn't want to engage. I mean, he engaged so little during the fight that had there been a big crowd, they'd have been booing.
Yeah, it's a good shout. It's a good shout. He's probably lucky there wasn't a crowd
Yeah.
there. Look, it was built as a semi-final, right? If Ryan won and Devon won, they were going to meet in this big rematch. And I guess this is a lesson to everyone, right? Don't mess with the boxing gods. Like, if a fight's there, just make it. And, you know, we've experienced this a lot over here in the UK, where it felt like we're going to get Fury and Ade, and then the rug gets taken off beneath our feet. Do we see Ryan Devon next? I mean, do they still do that? Is it a marketable fight? Is it a fight that sells?
Well, there's one argument that Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney should have had tune-up fights, frankly, rather than kind of world-class opponents, because they're both world-class opponents they were facing, but they were being paid very handsomely. As I say, 20 million, I understand, for Ryan Garcia, US dollars, 10 million for Haney and Teo Lopez, in what were not kind of A-side fights. So, yes, I'd watch it, but it doesn't have the zing about it that it would have had they both won, and won handsomely. I would on this performance from both of them, maybe it would be a snooze fest, because Haney would be gun shy against Garcia, and Garcia can't get his hands off, can't pull the trigger. But maybe the fight of each other, the championship of each other, is the fight they should have next. Maybe it doesn't sell, but with the dust having settled, even Conor Benn celebrating his celebrity after an amazing 12-round fight, losing to Chris Eubank, even said, "I'm not interested in a Ryan Garcia fight after seeing that." But maybe Devin Haney and Conor Benn would be a good fight.
Yeah, if I'm Conor Benn watching that, and also, as you say, getting the plaudits and the love that he's getting from the American audience, which I thought was interesting to see. If I'm Conor Benn and I can make 147, I'm getting right in there. It's like a grenade being thrown right into the middle, because he will make them fight.
Exactly.
Like, there's no way you can't fight if you're fighting a Conor Benn. Not saying Conor would win, because those are two still very good fighters, I think, in Ryan and Devon. But boy, oh boy, he would make sure that these guys know they're in a fight.
If you wanted to do something for Ryan Garcia now, just bring him over to the UK and throw him in with Conor Benn. It's a big,
that's massive.
Big fight. Exactly.
That's enormous.
You know, off day for Garcia. We give him his dues, but we throw him in with Conor Benn. Amazing.
Amazing indeed. Teofimo Lopez was probably the only standout performer, and he was fighting in second gear as well against Arnold Barboza. And it just showed the levels between the two, if I'm honest with you. I thought Barboza had a chance going in. I actually picked Barboza to win, because Teo gives you a 5 out of 10 performance one day, then a 9 out of 10 the next. And I thought it was like a 7.5, 8 on Friday, but it was enough to win comfortably. I don't know what you do with Teo next. I don't know if he goes to 147, Jaron Ennis. I don't know if there's a big named 140 guy out there that will give him an exciting fight, because Barboza was that guy coming off the Jack Catchell win. But Barboza just looked several levels below.
He did, at least a level or two. I wouldn't disagree with that. Barboza tried very hard during the fight, but Lopez's movement is very, very clever. I didn't agree with his dad in the corner. His dad kept saying, use your jab, but he was winning the fight easily just with movement and popping his right hand with hooks. I thought he looked very good. I mean, again, on commentary, they didn't mention once his performance against Josh Taylor, which is one of the performances of his career. And I thought he was showing elements of that in this fight against Barboza. But who do we put Lopez in with now? I think this was at one.
Richardson Hitchens. Hitchens gets past George Kambosos in July, I think it is.
Very good call. Very good call.
Yeah. They've had their little issues. They've gone back and forth, and I think that makes sense. You know what, yeah? You know that we as British fight fans like to moan about the state of boxing over here sometimes. When you look at the stars, and we've forever really bigged up the American stars, right? Haven't we? We've compared them, the next kings, right? The next 4 kings. We're quite lucky over here, aren't we? We've got some. They might not have the star power of some American names. They're not as outspoken. But we have got some talent over here that when they get in the ring, they give it their all and deliver.
Yeah, but I mean, look, and also we've got some, Ben and Eubank is the fight that jumps to mind, obviously, because it's just a couple of days away in the past. We're looking at we'll talk about it a bit later. Lee Wood and Anthony Cacace, both 36 years old, about to throw down in Nottingham at the weekend. Dave Allen and Johnny Fisher, who are British level stroke European level fighters who everyone's excited to see because we know they'll have a humdinger. The week after that, Josh Taylor and Echo Esserman, who've sparred together, but will put everything on the line at welterweight. There's
even a few weeks prior. I mean, before in the past, we had Ben Whittaker, Liam Cameron. The fight, yes, didn't deliver, but it was a big build-up, wasn't it? Like, how many thousands of people turned out? Like, we've got it over here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. People, I do, they're trying to revive boxing in America.
Good luck.
I know we'll talk about it soon, but Inoue could only draw 8,500 fans in the T-Mobile Arena, which is a 20,000 arena or 18,000 arena. The very big stadium fights are few and far between there. It's only Canelo that can draw, and he's not actually an American. He's just based in America. Beterbiev and Bivol are in Riyadh for a reason, because they wouldn't be doing massive numbers, even though they're brilliant fighters. We've got great fans here, and we've got the sport is thriving. Some of that is at the behest of Turki Al Sheikh and Riyadh season, because they really have shaken up the sport and lit a fire under it. But it's in a very, very healthy place right now on these shores.
Yeah, I think if I'm an American fight fan, I do my hardest to get behind maybe a few fighters that don't talk as much. I think David Benavidez, Virgil Ortiz, and Jesse Bam Rodriguez could be the future over there. Again, they don't speak as much, but neither did Canelo coming up. Those are fighters that you need to get behind because they're active, they're in great fights, and they deliver. All their fights are exciting.
Yeah.
Like really deliver.
Yeah, and where are the
as
heavyweights?
opposed to a lot of the guys
and where are the heavyweights over there? They're still not there.
Playing basketball.
Playing American
playing basketball or NFL.
Yeah.
I think that's it with them, unfortunately.
That's true.
All right, up next, we're going to look ahead to this weekend's action in Nottingham, and we're going to round up the rest of the week's boxing news. Welcome back. You're listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Gareth A. Davies alongside myself, Ade Oladipo. All right, let's go domestic. Not a domestic level fight, but a domestic fight between two world champions in their own right. Let's not forget, Lee Wood didn't lose his belt in the ring. He lost it because he's moved up in weight, and Cacace decided to dump the IBF to have this big fight against Lee Wood. Takes place in Nottingham this Saturday, live on DAZN. I can't wait for this one, just because these two boys, oh boy, they're going to throw hands. There is going to be, like, the jab might not be used in this fight. There's going to be a lot of power shots in this fight. And it's going to be a good atmosphere. Are you coming up to it, Gareth, or are you going to be in the studio?
I'm not sure at the moment. Obviously, it's Tuesday morning. This show goes out a little bit later, but I will find out today whether I'm required in the studio or up at the event. Love to be there for the atmosphere of it, because Lee Wood's been out for 18 months. They're both 36.
God.
They're both, which is a thing against him, and he's coming up a weight division. They're both 36. They both throw down brilliant victories over Joe Cordina and Josh Warrington for Cacace in his last two outings. And before that 18 months, the Michael Conlan fight, where Lee Wood pulled victory out of the jaws of defeat. The loss to Lara, the win against Mauricio Lara in the rematch, the victory against Josh Warrington, the IBF super featherweight title on the line. The difficulty for Lee is not his age at 36, because both these guys are wonderkins and having a second wind in their careers. It's the 18 months out, and it's the stepping up to super feather from feather that's going to make it difficult for me against Cacace, who is on fire at the moment.
Yeah, and I think people will see when these guys step in the ring, like Cacace is really a lightweight. He's enormous, really big back. And I was speaking to Carl Frampton about Cacace, who knows him well, and he's like, he's been waiting for these opportunities for so long. Like, just been desperate to make some money in the sport, and be in these big fights. And Lee's had his opportunity in. You mentioned Josh in there, Josh Warrington. He's had his opportunity, and they almost feel like this is Cacace's time now. So yes, he's 36, but he's not been in brutal fights where you compare it to Lee. Lee's been in a couple of really hard humdingers. And as you say, he's moving up in weight, been out of the ring 18 months, but he is going to be fighting in front of his Nottingham crowd.
That's big.
And they seem to give him something. They seem to give him an extra 10% from somewhere. When you think he's down and out, they just all rise up and start singing, and it helps him so much.
Yeah, no doubt about that. To use the football analogy, they're definitely the 12th man on the pitch for him in these events. He is loved. He's obviously from the same village, Gedling, as Carl Froch. So it's going to be a humdinger. I mean, I don't want to put the kibosh on it or jinx it at all, but it will deliver. It almost has to because of their styles.
Yeah, I will say this, and I won't. It's not going points. That fight, there's no way this fight's going 12 rounds. You think it's going to go 12 rounds?
I think it's Cacace on points, just in an absolute humdinger.
Yeah, no, it should be good. And again, it's another big fight for Frank Warren and what he's doing since joining the Zone. Queensbury Promotions seem to be putting on big fights after big fights. One big fight that was announced last week, I think just after we did the show, we both knew about it, but it got confirmed, was Daniel Dubois or Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois 2, which will take place July 19th. So it gives it a bit of breathing space from the big card in New York, July 12th, and obviously Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano the day before. They've gone Wembley Stadium. It's a big stadium. I think that I read somewhere 60,000 tickets have been sold already, which goes to show the power of Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. And I give Dubois a chance in this. I gave him 0% chance when he went to Poland, like zero, like honestly, zero. This time, I'll add maybe a 2 before that 0 this time. Usyk a favourite, but Dubois got a chance.
Yeah, 60,000 seats sold on the first 24 hours. It's going to be, again, here's an example, another case in point of British boxing or British hosted boxing being enormous. Absolutely looking forward to this. I've got it as a 75-25 fight. I see Daniel Dubois as dangerous for 5 rounds, 6 rounds. And then if Usyk weathers that early storm, I see him finagling his way to a 10th round, a 9th, 10th round stoppage against Dubois as he comes on strong. Massive opportunity for Dubois to create legacy here as the first undisputed champion on these shores, to win on these shores, which I think is absolutely spectacular. Obviously, Lennox Lewis won it elsewhere, but to be able to win it here and join that pantheon of greats is a brilliant motivation for him. It could just be his time. It was good to see the two men together. Daniel Dubois not fully sure of himself against Usyk in my mind in the body language. The push was a half-hearted push on the pitch. But it wasn't convincing, was it? You know?
No. It was the weirdest push I've seen in a long time. You're going to push a man. It wasn't quite that. From one stadium fight to another, which I guess, again, shows how big the boxing scene is over here. But slightly disappointing is Fabio Wardy versus Jarrell Miller off. Jarrell Miller pulling out. I've heard so many reasons as to why he has pulled out, so I'm not going to get into that. Justice Haney has come in. I was at the presser for Fabio Wardy versus Jarrell Miller at Portman Road. And I mean, they sold it perfectly well. I mean, Jarrell Miller's wearing a Norwich top. He looked enormous. And I was like, okay, this fight is selling out no matter what now. Yeah. It's a bit more of an ask and a push with Justice Haney stepping in. He isn't the talker like Jarrell Miller. He isn't the antagonist like Jarrell Miller. I mean, they're gonna do well, I think, to really get people invested in this, like they had people invested immediately with Jarrell Miller.
Well, he sold the fight massively. I mean, he was an absolute behemoth on the day, a bully. Wasn't he? Yeah. He was a bully. He was out of his seat. He was upsetting Warren and Fabio Wardley. I mean, I've heard torn pectoral muscle, which has affected him fighting. I think there's other things in the background as well. I'm not party to talk about them right now, but I do know what they are, but I cannot because I'm sworn to an off-the-record conversation. It's complex, but it doesn't reflect badly on Jarrell Miller. It's just a scenario he's found himself in, but he has torn a pectoral muscle, so he's ruled out physically of being involved in training camp and the fight. Justice Haney is seen as the New Zealand Moses Itauma, isn't he? And they were talking about linking Moses up for a fight with Justice. He's very, very highly ranked with a couple of the sanctioning bodies. He's a give it all fighter. It's a test still for Fabio. I think Jarrell Miller, as you know,
massive test.
Yeah, it is a test. I mean, what Jarrell Miller was a massive test. Yeah.
No, I think Justice Haney is, in a sense that, you know,
a good test, but it's still a really good fight. As I will never stop describing Jarrell Miller, it's like punching a giant sofa for people. How do you beat a giant sofa? You keep punching it till it's got holes in it. And that's what Daniel Dubois did. I thought that was a very difficult fight, by the way, for Fabio. But Fabio's game and up for anyone. Haney's a clever boxer. And like I say, he's considered the Antipodean version of Moses Itauma. So I'm really looking forward to the replacement opponent.
Yeah, it should be fun. I just weigh up the risk reward for Fabio, and the risk is very, very high, and the reward is high, but it's not as high because a lot of casuals won't know who Justice Haney is.
I think there'll be a lot of casuals there, Ade, as well. I think the area will enjoy it. I live about an hour away from there. There's a lot of buzz and excitement in Colchester, in Ipswich, all over Suffolk. I think
my sister lives in Ipswich.
It's a massive opportunity for people to turn out and see the fight.
Yeah, and they need something. Obviously, look, the club's been relegated from the Premier League. So I feel like they need some joy in their system. And I think Fabio's going to bring it to them. Fingers crossed. All right, we'll end on this very, very quickly. Yeah. AJ was ringside at Canelo. Skull, obviously, hopefully he didn't fall asleep, but he was there and he said, look, he has an injury to his elbow. He's going to have elbow surgery. And then after that, he knows he only wants one man, and that one man is Tyson Fury. You know, I'm getting bored of it. I'm actually not getting, I'm actually bored of it. Like, I just don't want to even, I'm only speaking about it because we've got to, and because it's AJ and it's Fury. It's the two biggest names in this country when it comes to boxing. But are you going to do it or not? I'm just very tired of it all now. Fury teasing, AJ injured, I'm tired of it.
No, the AJ injury was new on me, yes. I thought he'd already had the surgery and we were waiting for the...
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Eddie Hearn mentioned that like almost 2 months ago that he was having the surgery on his elbow.
I'm a conspiracy theorist now in my head. I just don't believe there is. I need to see evidence. I need to see evidence.
There's a bit of smoke. The smoke signals. They're both seeing these big paydays, big stadium fights. They're both getting itchy about it. People in the know tell me, Tyson Fury could. Well, Joshua's just ruled himself out for about 4 months, hasn't he? 4 or 5 months with that elbow surgery.
Pretty much.
People in the know who I speak to are convinced it will happen next spring.
Oh God!
I know, and it's probably going to run out of juice by the middle of next year. Certainly by next summer, the fight won't be there anymore. They should do it. There's 150 million quid in that fight, in my view. Sells out Wembley like that. It's the end of an era bragging rights fight, and we need to see it. Like you say, it's getting tiresome. Come on, guys. Give us what all the fans have wanted for 6 years. 2018, they were going to fight each other, weren't they? 2 fights signed. Or 2020, wasn't it, in lockdown? 2 fights.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
2020. And here we are now, 2025, and we've just been told potentially 2026. All right, you've been listening to Fight Extra on talkSPORT 2. Big thanks, as always, to my main man, Gareth A. Davies. Remember, if you've missed any of this show, you can listen to it as a podcast. Just find it under the Fight Night banner on the talkSPORT app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast from. We'll be back, as always, next week.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.